Do you know what LK-99 is? Well, a week ago you didn't. Maybe even 2 days ago you didn't. You might have heard of superconductivity somewhere in a headline someplace, but you probably didn't know that anybody cared whether it was room temperature or minus 7 bajillion degrees. Well, I know I can tell you that I like science, but I didn't know. So we got to get somebody who can help us go through the weeds here. Who else in the Tesla community would have a clue? Oh, Brian Wang. How you doing,
Hey,
Brian?
Randy. I'm doing great, Randy.
I hear that there's a science blog that you run called nextbigfuture.com that
Yeah.
has blown up
Yeah.
over the
Yep.
last few days.
Yes, it has.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Glad to hear that. And so people, you want to go to nextbigfuture.com, watch this show. We're going to bring you up to date today. And then probably, I mean, this is our goal anyway, we're probably going to do this every single day this week to bring you up to date every day, because this is like the biggest story ever. Brian, tell us why this is the biggest story, like maybe bigger than Chat GPT.
So, superconducting material has been around for over 100 years. There was many different versions of this material. You can cool down mercury to near absolute zero, again below hydrogen, helium temperature, whatever like that. And about 40 years ago, 1986, 87, something like that, they discovered something called a ceramic superconductor. YCBO was the short name for the chemical thing back then. They had to do a bunch of work to get this second type of superconductor to work. It works at above liquid nitrogen temperatures, which, the difference is, like, I don't know, like 100 times cheaper, right? Still very expensive. Not like, your ordinary refrigerator can't get that cold, right? Even your science grade lab thing can't get that cold, right? So difficult to work with, but super valuable. Super valuable. It's an $8 billion or so per year industry where they do this stuff. Your MRIs use it. There are some maglev trains. Japan, China have some maglev trains where the whole train flows from it. They're using mainly the I think the metal type superconductors or that kind of stuff. And then anyway, so which superconductor used? The first version that cooled even more, or the slightly warmer superconductor? Depend upon what you're doing, how much current, how strong the magnetic fields are, because they're both different. Thus, two types, type 1, type 2. But you can't make a magnet that good, that powerful, under using ordinary materials. You need to have superconductor, which means that the current flows without resistance. So metal current flows really well, but this is even better. So the difference is how much heat and stuff you generate. And for people talk about it, using it for transmitting power from the grid, a nuclear power plant, a coal plant, you send the power away, and then the whole U.S. grid might lose half of the power from sending it around, right?
Oh, okay.
So it's a big chunk. But I think that thing of sending power around is a particularly difficult one. They have not made superconducting power cables for utility, right? In theory, you might be able to, but no one has bothered to spend the money to do it. And also making that much material of this type is difficult. So many things that you might be able to do don't happen because of cost and difficulty. And a lot of the cost right now is the difficulty is the fact that they cool it down so much. So room temperature means I can do it willy-nilly, right? And then there's the other application, which is for computer chips. And that is less power level. But the difference there, I think, is more interesting for the possibility for LK-99, which is also only currently working if certain things get verified, which have not been verified, up to about 250 milliamps. So low power. So you're not going to be floating any trains or doing stuff like that with this material, unless it is the gateway to better material, right? But at the low level power, if you have thin film of it, then you can make your nice low superconducting computer chip, which as a nice little feature, our current laptops have been stuck at about 4 to 5 gigahertz for your computer chip. People don't even think about what the gigahertz thing of it. Like back in the day, 1980s, 1990s, 80, 86, 286, 386. I remember things were getting like 3 times faster every time.
Yeah.
Then they stopped getting 3 times faster every time. Why? Because they hit the wall at 4 gigahertz, right? And then all the effort of a few decades get to 5 gigahertz. So then they said, okay, well, I can make them faster, but I got to make a bunch of chiplets or a bunch of little things, cores. So then I got like 100 cores and I get faster, right? But it's not because the chip itself got faster. That nice little doubling, tripling thing from the 286 to 386 to 486, that was because they went from like 1 gigahertz to 2 gigahertz to 4 gigahertz. A nice little faster every time. So how fast could the superconductor chip go? 800 gigahertz. 800. So like 200 times faster. So the Nobium ones exist and do that. They pay, DARPA or whatever, paid Rochester University in New York $15 million last year to say, hey, make these really great chips. And they're kind of around, like a few, like 100,000, not transistors, Josephson junctions, maybe 1 million, taking decades to get that number, but they're ultra fast. So I used it for something really hard, not a 10 billion transistors, 100 billion transistors, 100,000 really, really fast ones for some particular
application
where I really want that speed. And then if you get room temperature, I don't have to cool it freaking, have some, data center, I'm cooling this thing down to crazy temperatures. I could have this everywhere because my laptop is room temperature. I could pop in a little superconducting GPU if it only had like, 1,000 of these things. And then whatever had to be super fast could then go through that, right? So that would be, even if you only had one Josephson junction, only had one, right? So that would be, you can make that into something called a RF squid. So then I could detect, a tiny variation in magnetic fields. You can see that they use that to scan like a dollar bill or something like that and look at the different particles and see if it's a fake bill or something like that, right? So there's applications even using one, right? Wow. So, but then there's the difficulty of making the stuff. So that's kind of like a summary of it. So I think the really cool thing would be computers 200 times faster than we got now. It would take decades to roll, even at Pando, but that's part of the miracle of what that could give us.
Okay, so it was either you or someone else I heard the other day compared it. They said this would be about the equivalent of going from no electricity to electricity, going from this level or capability of electricity to the next level of electricity. So is that mostly going to be involved in the computer and the grid world, or would this be in terms of household appliances, auto applications, batteries? I mean, where are some of the other applications?
So I was saying it all depends upon how much of the stuff you can make, right? Because right now, in these little tests, which people are saying, hey, it's taking so long to replicate this thing. When it kind of works, one person on Twitter and Twitch, showed him baking the stuff and making it, right? So kind of like, okay, I'm making a souffle, right? I'm making a souffle, sometimes right, sometimes it doesn't. So everyone gets about like 10% chance making souffle work, anything at all, right? So that's even the guys who came up with this thing. 10% of the time, they do like 8,000 times, 10% of the time it works, right? So the souffle rises only 10% of the time, right? So then you have some group in Beijing, something like that, or India, and they make a paper that said, okay, we tried, didn't work.
Yeah.
And then they write a paper saying, okay, it's still, the miracle didn't happen, right? Which is basically a paper about how the souffle didn't rise.
Right.
But it's the souffle, it's difficult, right? How difficult, when it worked, they got these flakes, little tiny pieces that are levitating, right? Partially levitating. Right. Yeah, normally a superconductor would fully levitate, a normal one, but we don't even know this is the same kind of the other ones,
Right.
right? It levitate the flake. So the thing is, one of the guys who, like I said, who did this work publicly said he started with about 400 grams of material, which is basically a pound, right?
Okay.
And then he ended up with, a micron or a milligram of stuff. So we're on the order of 1 part per million or 1 part per billion of when it works. So the whole souffle doesn't rise. The tiny speck of a souffle rises, right? So hard to do, right? And also the theory from Berkeley National Labs, again, theory, simulations, the best of like tossing supercomputers this thing and modeling some stuff out on assumptions for 6 hours, right? But science behind your guesstimate, right? Mm-hmm. They say this thing needs to replace, in this lead, a bone-like lead and phosphorus, a bone-like thing of lead. I have to replace each of the lead atoms, every 8th one, with a copper. So I'm only statistically kind of doing that when I make this whole thing together.
I see.
And so that's why it's lottery-sized things where it got close enough in the one piece.
I see.
Right? So when they feel, it didn't work. Yeah, you can't statistically make this thing work that well because in theory, it is freaking hard to get 1 in every 8. So maybe it works when statistically averaging between 6 and 8 in this little zone, right? So that's why it's these tiny flakes that do anything, right? So, but science can handle that. We got graphene, carbon nanotubes, really tiny molecular things, and then they do work upon it, right? And the good thing is it is room temperature, so they can take a lot of cracks at this thing, right? But you have to be able to work with sand grain pieces of this stuff, and you have to be able to analyze it correctly, and you have to be able to measure out, did I get to 1 billionth of an ohm of resistance, or to get to 1 millionth of an ohm resistance on my sand grain, which is imperfect. I didn't get a perfect one, right? I got an imperfect variation of this thing, and I got to make it better. So I got to make a bunch of sand grains, a bunch of flakes, 1 in a million, 1 in a billion times, and they got to do stuff, right? So this is the scale of challenge, and that's why the national labs, they're working on this for sure. Absolutely for sure, the labs are working on this thing, and they've taking the cracks at souffles. But the fact that I got 1 grain to do something or other, right? Does that say, let me, I got 200 papers. I'm freaking at a national lab, right? I got 200 papers. I'm going to rush out a paper saying, kind of me too.
Yeah, kind of me too.
Kind of me too. No, I'm not dumping out that paper, right? If I can't conclusively say something that's going to hold up for years after, right? I'm not going to chip in with, I think it may be something, right? I'm national lab. I got to say definitively, either we're bounded where I've checked it out enough where I'm saying complete BS, but it's enough applications where people are kind of getting something that they're not going to, it's up in the air enough that they can't slam dunk. Doesn't work, does work, right? They can't slam dunk it, right? Go ahead.
So then if we have all these different labs, and some people are estimating that there are thousands or even tens of thousands of labs that have the capability to do this in their kitchen or their high school lab, if it's well outfitted. If you have tens of thousands of labs that are doing this, you're going to have some people that report, some people that put out fake stuff, some people that put out nonsense stuff. So as I'm looking through X, formerly known as Twitter, and looking at the stream, there's like, I don't know, 10 posts a minute on the subject, and half of them are jokes, and another third of them are fake, and another, so it's kind of hard to sift through all that. How are you managing to sift through and get to the core, so to speak, of what's going on out there?
One, because I was always interested in all kinds of scientific breakthroughs. So I've always been interested in superconductors, always interested in room temperature superconductors. Like when the YCBO work was happening in the late 80s or like that, I was paying attention to that, right? And saw it. When the graphene, carbon nanotube, nanotechnology stuff was taken off, I was paying attention to that, right? So I've been paying attention to scientific breakthroughs all the time, right? So I would pay attention to it even if other people didn't care.
Yeah.
Right. Because I can see, where this is a high likelihood path to one of the holy grails.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's important. I know it's important. The fact that it might take years, like I said, since for the last 40 years, 50 years, various stuff happening with it. I care about every one of them. Right. So I care about this one. Right. And I see enough odd stuff happening with this thing that I think it will amount to interesting stuff. If it only resulted in a new way to make something that works at minus 170 degrees, which Chinese group said maybe. I think again they didn't provide good enough evidence for that to convince the people who want really good evidence of it. Right. But even if it only did that, and also had what they call diamagnetism, where you got stuff floating over a magnet, a grain, a flake, right? I can't throw together something that's going to diamagnetically float within a week. Like we got like 6 groups floating little flakes of stuff within a week, with some with stuff from their kitchen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's the real ones versus the fake ones, but even that is not normal.
Yeah.
Right. What were we watching float when they were doing the graphene stuff? I didn't remember seeing anything float from the graphene stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So I already see this as having enough unusual stuff. Even if it's only a superconductor, a kind of superconductor, maybe a new superconductor at below 170 degrees Celsius, and at room temperature, it's a really strong diamagnetic, and it's an entirely new mechanism for doing it that has to be perfected on near atomically precise levels. Because the graphene stuff, we discovered the graphene, 2004, something like that. The 2-layer carbon stuff, but then in 2018 they found MIT, there's some magic angle, of the graphene structure that when you do it, then becomes superconducting. 2-layer thing. 2022, 4 and 5 layer do something. 4 and 5 layer molecular stuff does something when you get the angle right. Sounds kind of similar to atomically precise, changing the volume by 0.48% in order to, instead of using diamond anvils, I put a copper instead of a lead to change the volume of my atomic structure by 0.48%. Similar kind of things, right? And the fact that it could take weeks or months to sort out and get more definitive stuff, I'm expecting nothing of this thing.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm expecting nothing of this thing. And if it only opens another doorway to room temperature superconductors, like the guys who did the far 5 layer graphene, they said, we think this is a room temperature superconducting, but it might be a doorway to that. It might be on the path to the Holy Grail.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So then there's been a lot of discussion about the patent aspect. And I had somebody the other day who I respected say, oh, no, there's no patent. And then I did 5 minutes of research. And yes, there is a patent. So have you taken a look at the patent at all to see what is patentable, or what is the clever thing they've done that would allow them to and have they received a patent, or is this a patent applied for? I didn't look at that.
I would say because their souffle recipe is so incomplete, that if you get something that really works reliable, then the fact that you had something that described, like Edison had some kind of like whale oil candle wick light bulb,
Yeah.
That won't do anything when you make your incandescent bulb, in my opinion. So they don't have, and that's why they brought, the paper was rushed, and probably they hope for a Nobel Prize. If it's open that doorway, open the door to the room temperature superconductor, right? And the other scientists say, oh yeah, we got the new path. This is an interesting, great new path. Here, have a Nobel Prize. We got a really great new path. That's enough for that. But the patent, which says, here's a doorway, and by the way, here's a doorway, and it happens to open up to Mars, right? A doorway opened up to Mars. We're on Earth, you step through and you're in Mars, right? But I got to go explore Mars to find something, right? And so the doorway, and then here's the patent, and then anything I find on Mars, hey, I got a patent because I got the patent on the doorway. Doesn't mean anything.
Gotcha.
Doesn't mean anything.
All right. So ARK Invest, their top team, their futurist team, got together, and they're putting a 60% likelihood that this is something. I don't know that they think it is a room temperature superconductor, 60%, but kind of what you're saying, that it's something, that it is significant in terms of a breakthrough. Maybe it's a door, maybe it is, the actual superconductor. So are you kind of on the same page that they are, or how would you differentiate?
I am more at the 90% that is something.
Wow.
Right. But something, there's huge variations between something eventually useful and something more useful early on. And, how close to the grail do we get from this thing? Like Chamath, billionaire Chamath on the All In podcast, he does not care if it's a super diamagnetic. He also wouldn't care if it's only 100-degree superconductor, right? It could end up being, take the $8 billion industry and then make it a $100 billion industry in 10 years, right? But he says, I don't care, because it is not change the world trillions of dollars thing with the real deal, right? So the real deal, and even a 2-decade path to the real deal, room temperature superconductor, broadly applicable, all that kind of stuff. And I also differentiate between, the real deal for computer chips, two-dimensional thin film,
right, low
electricity, versus super magnets, flying cars, and Back to the Future boards, right? I actually don't care that much about the levitating trains part. Although what I do care about it is that if you get a really good magnet up the Tesla amount, so up the current, right? Then there's space applications I care about, right? But the on Earth ones, but I like it. If it's better than nothing, I would like to see it happen. But it's not the one that I'm as excited about versus computers 100 times faster, electronics, and certain space applications, other things. There's other things that I think are more interesting, and also ones that involve less material and other stuff. Because once you have it, there's like, the stuff is so miraculous. It's like, if I could create a room temperature thing that could create 100 Tesla, right? So 100 Tesla, I think it's like 1 billion times the magnetic field of your fridge magnet or whatever it is. If you make that, you, instead of using diamond and whatever like that to make a tower that goes from ground to Earth orbit and something like that, you could have magnets at your core, and then you can make a super strong structure that could go like that. So there's mega engineering, crazy impossible stuff. If I could make 1 million tons of this stuff, because basically, if I'm going from here to there, I gotta make 1 million tons, right? But like way before then, you could do other things. So because I'm a futurist, I know all the really insane stuff that happens when I can make a lot of this thing, right? But I'm also, an investor and a business person. I know what is a more realistic, when I'm only making microns now, kind of stuff to some more amount to a pathway, because it matters grams, millions of tons, right?
Yeah.
And working super reliable, right? So the miracle doesn't stop, once I can make a gram really good, right? It's like level after level after level. It's the gift that keeps on giving. It's just like, how much the electricity that Edison had versus the electricity we have now, because he was not making nuclear reactors, right? He wouldn't,
right.
But it was still crazy good compared to the steam engine.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Let me, this is probably a question, an answer you don't have, but I'm going to try it anyway. If I'm a college dropout science major, if you're like me, I took the easiest science I could take in university, even though I took all the science I could in high school. What should I look for if I don't listen to your and my updates the next week or so? Is there anything that would be kind of, oh my gosh, that's it?
A peer-reviewed paper for one of the major journals. There's reports that the original guys will publish a paper, probably in Applied Materials, end of this month, end of August, or into September, right? Other peer-reviewed papers from other places, major ones, major peer-reviewed papers that you'll know because people are freaking out about it. It won't be like, oh, I have to go digging through a scared journal. You'll find out.
So in that same article that's on your nextbigfuture.com blog, I think in the same article it was talking about them producing a paper later this month. Didn't it indicate that they've actually got quite a few of these flakes now? I mean, it's not just a 1 or 2 or 3 flakes. They got a fair amount of material, right? Or they say
they say they do. They say they've been exchanging material with other labs. I think the rumor had been that they had given it to U.S. National Labs a week before the story broke.
Okay.
With other places, which would make sense. Okay, because one of the partners they got on board was a U.S. scientist, right? So that established credible U.S. scientist try and get published into a journal would then call up his buddies who are at other national labs, and they say, hey, give me some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And then let me test it and do stuff. Right. So none of those labs who got the stuff are saying, okay, we tested it, it's crap. Right. No one's come out and said that. Right. Yeah. So the fact that you have utter silence, some people view that as, oh, it's so negative. Oh, it's like stuff is going on.
Yeah.
The fact that we're on the outside looking for any scrap off the table, right? Stuff is going on. They're trying to figure stuff out. If it was so easily dismissed, someone would say, once I'm sure enough that I can dismiss it with enough credibility, I'm going to put my reputation on the line and dismiss it. There is something to being able to conclusively dismiss it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Not that easy.
Yeah.
So not that easy to prove it, not that easy to dismiss it. So it's but they're only going to do it where it's like, I must be so certain. I will stake my reputation.
Yeah.
On this thing, my job.
Yeah.
Here, I'm putting this out, right? So I'm not that certain. I'm not going to do it, and I'll do under cover of I'm going to submit it to a paper and have other guys look at it to check my work.
Right. Yes. All right. Let's switch subjects for a minute. Still in the science realm. Elon Musk said yesterday or the day before, I forget which, he said FSD now we have the first evidence of something that looks like AGI. And that your car now will have a mind, even if did he use small mind? in a minor way. What you must have had a take on that.
Obviously I've been focused on many other things.
Oh, yes.
Research stuff. But I equate this to the Garry Kasparov. Back in the 80s when he was fighting against the IBM supercomputer blue, whatever, which is weaker than our cell phone.
Right. Right.
But back then it was big. When you're playing against that computer and losing eventually in chess,
Yes.
he said he felt like he was competing against a big intelligence, which is basically like, I'm a very smart guy and I'm doing something against this machine. And so in order to assuage my ego, I'm going to make it seem like it's a person,
Yeah.
right? And it's a super smart person.
Yeah.
When the champion at the game of Go, more complicated, more statistical things than chess, was losing, and the other champions were losing eventually to the Go computer games, they felt it was like God had come down to play Go against them, right? So all the AI stuff, and then people sometimes see that when I'm doing with the chat GPT, it seems like they're the person there, right? So anytime there's the intelligence there, you would naturally, your normal thing is, I deal with other intelligences. Now that I'm dealing with artificial intelligence, I feel like there's a person there behind it because it's doing it so well, right? So when the driving thing feels like a person driving, it feels like my son driving, it feels like my chauffeur driving, right? Yeah. Yeah. So then you'll get that sensation, right? What does that sensation mean? It means you're getting better. That's good, but it's all still down to statistics, the march of nines of safety, right? The fact that it's kind of has that thing, but Elon has not just his view on that, he also knows what's happening with Tesla bot behind the scenes, right? And also those things that kind of merging in the background. So if he says, I see this being on the path to AGI, physical AGI, because you said that a lot of times, right? He, like me, a bit of a futurist, can see it may not be there now, but it's looking damn good. And I see it. I can see how fast we're improving. I can see it getting there. That this is, we could hit the local minima, all the kind of crap like that, where progress slows down. But right now, leaps and bounds, I'm super stoked. So Elon's super stoked, and I'm happy that he's super stoked. Right. So, and then eventually, I think it'll get there, because it can't get, if every time it's getting 10 times better, right? Then in 10 years, if it doesn't stop, you're a million times better.
That's right.
And how good will that be? So
on a subject that's not related to science, although some people consider accounting and finance to be science, we had Zach
Kirk
stepping down today as CFO. And what was your takeaway on that one?
Anyone who's worth over $100 million and is working a really difficult tech job can decide to step down because he can say, I got FU money. At any point, he can say FU and then walk away for whatever reason, because he wants to do whatever, because he can do whatever he wants. So if he says it's just too much, he could have other things, he could have everything he wants to do. But again, we're talking about people with FU money, right? So when they do something that's kind of thing, they didn't hang in there. But you are making this thing based on logic, based on not having FU money.
Yeah.
So he has FU money. So he does something that he chooses to do because he can do whatever he wants.
Right. Yeah. So my guess would be he seems like a really solid guy. Obviously, he's thought of as a really solid guy by the people at Tesla and by the community. I think that he would leave the company as well as he could. He wouldn't leave it in a lurch. He wouldn't leave it without super capable people, right, that are going to take over his responsibilities. That is kind of what you would think.
Yeah, that's like when Karpathy left. Yeah. The next guys were good.
Yeah.
Right. So Tesla had a deep bench, not sweating any particular position, right? Other than Elon, right?
Yes.
And even then, they could probably carry on without Elon, just like Apple carried on without Steve Jobs. But you can clearly see for that Apple case that probably Steve would have done a better job. right?
Well, maybe
Tim Cook,
not.
maybe not.
No, he would have been more innovative.
Innovative.
Would have come out with more new products. He would have improved the products at a faster clip. He would have been crazier and wilder and doing stuff that was changing the world, which Tim Cook doesn't apparently have that kind of a brain. But Tim Cook is a logician.
Yeah.
I mean, he is capable of doing a logistics side of the business. They talk about first and second generation companies, where the first generation is the entrepreneur and the second generation is the manager. And the second generation is where they go to the moon in terms of profits. And of course, the third generation comes along and destroys everything. So, but kind of the same thing here, even though they weren't related. I think that's what you've got with Jobs and Cook. And I think there undoubtedly are plenty of managers at Tesla that could do the Tim Cook thing if that took place.
Right. So I'm not worried about Zach leaving. I don't think there's any, hidden stuff going on. Like, and Gary Black's speculation about inter-office drama. It's like, you're writing a soap opera story into it. Like why? So it doesn't matter. Again, it's like people with a lot of money are choosing to do different things.
Yeah. All right, and then last thing on the list. I know that you are all about Starship. We've had some activity this week on Starship, and we should be within a couple of weeks or so, 3 weeks of maybe trying again for a something in orbit.
Mm-hmm.
What's your bring me up to date? What do you think?
So they did the static fire test. 29 of 33 engines lit. This time it had the water deluge protection system. So previously they did the firing to try to go to orbit without the protection system. They ran half power and the cement was fine. The super cement they had was fine. They ran full power and then it blew up the cement and threw chunks everywhere. Right. So now they've spent the time to make this wire protection steel plate thing, and that worked. It protected the thing. So was it full power? Was it partial power? They do another stack fire test, whatever. But I think the wire deluge system, I'm confident that the team, made that work, because the point is not to do once and have the thing not break up. The goal of Starship is flying multiple times per day, kind of like a plane, right? So then this thing has to have the wire deluge thing work multiple times per day, right? And then launch that thing up, and then have it be at a cost where it's only, the cost of a airport runway, right? And then make multiple things for this thing. Because that's the vision I have, and the vision that Elon has, where we're going to make a lot of these launch towers with this protection stuff and launch these a lot of times. The goal, the big advantage is to launch it, at least weekly, each one weekly, and then daily, multiple times per day, right? So, and then, of course, the near-term thing, before the end of the year, next year, get the thing to launch, go to orbit, and come back, and then ramp it up. Sure. So I think it's looking good for that. It's those things where it's really a miracle happening, and it's a crazy leap in innovation where it's like, oh, we're going from, Goddard level rocketry, or more like a Pan Am seaplane level thing to a 747, and it's making that leap of they're going 50 years, and the other guys spent 20 years trying to restack a space shuttle into an Apollo configuration, and they got one test off. So, it's the kind of like where the miracle is so big that people just don't get it.
Yeah. So a couple 3 weeks.
I'm still. It could easily be a month or 2 months. Right. I hope it's 2 or 3 weeks, but things like FAA bureaucracy, people who don't like Elon slowing things up. Someone could toss out a lawsuit about some kind of owl, and then it could be delayed for a long time. So there's things out of SpaceX control out of Elon's control,
Right.
which could hold this, you know, if the right lawsuit and crap happened, you know, what can you do?
Right. Brian, thank you so much for coming on as usual and making us a little more scientific. I mean, you know, maybe I'll go back to UCLA and get back in the physics department. Well, no, I'm not. All right. So everybody go to his, if you haven't had a reason yet, now you've got a reason to check out his blog. Remember, this is not just about rocketry. It's not just about superconductors. It's about a wide range of science, including lots and lots of Tesla stuff. So you want to go to nextbigfuture.com and check it out. And Brian, thanks for coming, and we will see you again. And to all of you out there, it has been great talking to you.
Thanks, Rene.